Hello there, Sorry from 17 once again. This is another Balls Deep, and unfortunately guys, I've done this one before. Did it yesterday. Did a few yesterday, and they didn't work. They didn't work for a very, very specific reason, and I know what it is now, so hopefully this will work. If you don't hear this, I'm talking to myself for no reason, and I should probably be committed. But anyhow, this is Ghost Rider. I'm going to pretend to be new to this game, but I'm not now, because I played it a little bit. Let's jump in, shall we? New game. So yesterday I played on challenging, so I'll do the same today. It's actually pretty challenging, especially later on. So, if you don't know much about this game, this is an interesting one, because on my previous graphics card, I tried to emulate this game a couple of years back, because I was curious about it when I heard about it. When I do things like, you know, 50 PlayStation 2 games that are underrated that you've never heard of that you should play, and then I checked the lists to see if there's anything I could make a Balls Deep for, and this was one of them. But it wouldn't run on my other graphics card for whatever reason. Runs perfectly on this one, which is fine. But something we noticed on this particular sequence on the last time I did this is there's a picture in this little vignette mode that looks just like Tony Montana from Scarface. Like, look at the picture of the guy here. You could have swore that they were straight up trying to rip off good old Al Pacino, couldn't you? And the emulator was having serious troubles with this cutscene yesterday, because I was encoding with a different codec, and the quality was through the roof, and it was causing the files to be like 50 gig a minute. It was ridiculous, and it started stuttering when it shouldn't, and I had to change that. But the guy narrating right now is a rip-off of Sam Elliott. Look how much they've stuck his head on a picture of a dude on a motorcycle. That looks fucking horrendous, that one. Love that picture. And then there's all the storylining and the random Bryan Cranston forehead man and the eyes and everything and the Kirk Thorntons, and then we skip this and get into the game. And immediately you're looking at it, 60 frames per second, looks fantastic, doesn't it? Some definitive artifacting on his head there, that's just emulator garbage. And the first thing I noticed when I played this the other day is when I tried to move the camera to the left, I did a roll. Because of course this is a God of War clone, and it has the directional rolls that you would expect from God of War, right? It also has the fixed camera. And another thing that's interesting about this particular game is, because they've emulated the God of War systems, it even has the better roll. If you mash attack while rolling, you get a much faster roll and you cancel recovery frames, which is kind of insane, because it means that the people who made this game imitated God of War very well, on a fundamental level. And they got it right in a lot of ways. And this is a super kind of like B-level game that is imitating a lot of better games, and it does it all kind of competently and in a fun manner, which leads to a fun, dumb, but very repetitive kind of game. And there is a lot more to the game than you would expect when it comes to the technical side, but unfortunately it doesn't feel that great to play in a lot of ways, especially if you know God of War. Like, the biggest problem with this game is that God of War feels a million times better than it. But that being said, this is the kind of game that I like, because they don't do these games anymore. I love this idea of kind of B-tier, you know, not AAA titles that were really fun and had charm but weren't the best games. And this is exactly that kind of title. So, square is your standard quick hits. Triangle is, yeah, your punches. B or circle is your grab, just like, you know, what you would expect. You can block with R1, and then the specials are on the other triggers. You can shoot your gun as well, and the gun sounds really weird when you don't have any ammo in it, which I think is funny. You need to power that up to make that effective. But just looking at this with the graphics card, you know, making this look a lot better than it would have done on the PlayStation, and the higher resolution, you know, it's a pretty game. It's got that really nice PlayStation 2 aesthetic that appeals to me a ton. And what I'm hopefully going to be able to do is I'm going to show you the driving section that's going to come up after this initial introduction. Which, the driving sections are probably my favourite part of the game, because they're really irreverent and stupid, and I think it completely encapsulates what these games do really well. And here it is explaining the rank. So as you've noticed already, this game has rank much like Devil May Cry. And in this game it actually ties into features of the game, which I think is pretty cool actually. Can we do the combos right now? No, I can't. I can't do the super sexy shotgun move. Can we do the Plume of Prometheus yet? Probably not, right? No, we can't. But there's a lot of stuff that's directly inherited from its influences, and it makes it a more enjoyable game. But it's just, if you like what you see, this is pretty much what you do the entire game. There's a couple of deviations from it. Of course, the enemies change, the bosses change and things, and you do have a lot of different abilities. There's the shotgun. There's the crazy random wrestling moves, which are always the rage in these kind of games. Gotta love it. Come here! There's his chain grab. One thing I find really interesting, this guy has chains, and he only swings like less than a meter in front of him. You know, that's one of the things that was really good about Kratos. He had chains and he swung that thing like 50 meters in front. This guy's a little bit more reserved with his old swings. I don't think he wants to hit himself. A little afraid of the old backlash. There's the Devil May Cry 1 doorways, where it bleeds that red and makes that very similar effect, which is a nice little... I hope it's an homage to those other games. And then here is the healing station. You'll notice that there's a lot of pixelated artifacts on a lot of the visuals, like the particles. Like, do you see this wall over here? Do you see how it has that ghostly particle, like, ghosting on it? That's all artifacts from the emulator. That's not how the game is meant to look. But if you look at the quality of the textures and the clarity of the picture, that's all the benefit that we get for emulation, whereas the artifacts are kind of the goofy shit that emulators do. Nothing's perfect, but it's completely playable, guys. This game feels like it runs well, all considered. The controls are not the best, I don't think. The relationship between pressing buttons and getting attacks is not as one-to-one as I would like it, so some of the stuff feels a little bit like the combos in Mortal Kombat X, if you've ever played that, where you seem to do things really quickly, and then the animations play out quite slow on the screen, which I find that to be really disorientating. But it's a cool game, you know, it's a fun game. These are the guys who do the fireballs. You want to be careful of these fellas, because there's the ones that are going to get you in trouble. And then, of course, when you beat people up and you get the orbs and things, you are getting upgrade points for that, which is going to pay dividends later on and make the game a lot more fun to play, a lot more creative to be part of. Oh, you can't grab people before it's time, it seems. It's one of those games. But one thing I did notice, I streamed this yesterday after the part of the Balls Deep that I made, and the game was pretty much what I expected up to one point. There was a boss fight against a girl on a train, and it was so inflated compared to everything else, because she was in a shield, you had to beat up her buddies or wait, and she came out of the shield, and sometimes you punched her once and she went back in the shield. It was really, really broken feeling. And I had about 2 hits left on my HP bar, and I had to kill an entire, like, last 2 phases. It took a while, I got beat up a lot, and it was really frustrating, and then everything else was perfectly fine and what you would expect from this kind of game, but that was a massive jump in difficulty and questionable design as well. It wasn't the most fun I've ever had. But I do think there's a lot of charm to this game, and this is an interesting aspect too. So this guy has a rank requirement to break this shield, so I have to combo this guy without being hit and get my style meter up, and if I can get my style meter up, then we're going to be just gravy, and we can break his shield and have fun with it. And breaking the style meter is as you would expect. You've got to mix your combos up, and then once it's high enough, you'll bust his shield, and then you can put him down in whatever fashion you want to do that. And I read a comment today about a guy who said thanks for taking my request to play this game, which it wasn't a request because I didn't even read your request, dude, but it was a good request either way. And he told me a bunch of different mechanics, and this is what I needed to know yesterday. There is a camera reset in this game, which is super useful because you can't control the camera, so that's the only camera control we have. And there were a lot of instances yesterday in stream where if I could see the enemy, I wouldn't have been able to take so many stupid hits that I was taking, but alas, you know, hindsight is always 20/20, or so they say. But I don't want to unleash any of the super sexy action time moves until we fight something a little bit bigger, because I feel like that should be the thing. And then they're telling us how to use demon souls to upgrade, which is hilarious. But backbreakers, wrestling moves, random crazy gargoyle statue men, and that's the end of this fight. And I think it's going to introduce the big fella, right? And the big fella, on my previous Balls Deep recording, I beat him by stun-locking him with Plume of Prometheus, which I thought was amazing.
Ready for my penance stare.
There's the taunt. Do you want me to go through the door? That way is blocked. Interesting. Wants me to go down here. And here are the stereotypical bird creatures that you see a lot in God of War. However, you can't press circle, I don't think, in this game, and just murk them, which would be fantastic, but it doesn't seem to be a mechanic that they've got here, which is fine, but... I wish I could have shared my other Balls Deep, guys, because this was all new to me, and I was nerding out on how goofy this game was, and how it was straight up a God of War clone, and unabashedly so. But now I've played a lot more of the game, and the game kind of soured on my lips, because it doesn't really change too much, and the enemies come at you in massive gauntlets that are not the most graceful selection, and it gets a little bit tedious. I had fun streaming it, so if you want to check out the stream, you'll see me go from like super nerding out and being, I wish they made more games like this, to, yeah, this game's kind of getting a bit boring now. So I can't, unfortunately I can't repeat how excited I was on that first impression, but I'll have you know it was a strong one. Because I like clones, I do. They're generally games that, you know, wanted to make a specific type of title and then used systems of a different title to make that game and then tweaked it in subtle ways that can sometimes be really interesting. A game that I would use as an example is the Captain America game, sorry. It essentially rips off Batman Arkham Asylum, but it does it in a kind of different way, and it's nowhere near as polished or as good, but it's interesting because it's unique. Getting slapped so the game's telling me to dodge, I love that. Why don't you dodge, twat? It might keep you alive. But this is, you know, if you like this type of stuff and you just want nothing but combat, I imagine you can have a lot of fun with this. This is one of those titles that's aged really well. Mechanically, especially. Some of the mechanics on this, because you can guard cancel a lot of animations. Rolling out of them is not the best, but guarding is really, really good in this game. It reminds me of Darksiders, because you'll notice when I'm doing these big elaborate swings, if I press guard, it takes me immediately out of the animation. There are a lot of games that are released today that don't understand the priority of that, and that's what makes it so good. So you can reduce recovery frames, you can reduce all kinds of unwanted animations. It's great. The block is up there with Darksiders in my opinion for the cancelability. I just don't think, with an F, because you know that's how you spell it, that the attacks feel the best on the input side. But that's just a feel that you either have or you don't. Like if you've ever played God Hand on the emulator, because there's a bit of emulator lag, it might be emulator lag actually, guys, it might not be the game's fault. You feel like there's an inherent delay in it, and you can get used to it, but until you get used to it, it doesn't feel one-to-one, and it doesn't feel as satisfying as it could. On PS2 that might not exist, but it could just be part of the engine, it could be part of how the game feels, because some games, as I mentioned, Mortal Kombat X, if you've ever played that, Injustice 2, a lot of those combos, you don't wait for the input to come out, because if you do, you've missed the window to input the next input. You have to do it very quickly, and it's a combo system that is easier because the timing is not as difficult because you just kind of do it really quickly, but also fundamentally it's not my favourite because I like to be able to sight read a lot of hits and when I'm supposed to do things. So this is the guy who had Plume of Prometheus, so if he has a multi-hitting attack, this fella, and he has a jump attack, and I'm not good at blocking any of them apparently. That's his jump, so if you see him telegraph that, all you have to do is jump above it. There's his jump again, and you can just loop him on the old jump attacks. But here's the super sexy, crazy action mode time, which is like Rage of the Titans, and it puts them in a stun state. So every hit is a stun lock, which Bright was mentioning was a really, really, really cool feature, and I agree with him completely. Because a lot of games think difficulty is giving enemies hyper armor, and if Neo had learned this lesson, it'd be a considerably better game. But as you can see, you get graded at the end, so not only is there multiple difficulties, but there's a grading system if you want to get the best rank. And it looks like it'll probably be quite interesting to rerun the levels and get the ranks. And now I can show you the motorcycle section, which is my favourite part of the game. It's like Road Rash meets Wipeout, with nowhere near the measure of quality of either of those games. It's kind of amazing. And the other day we had a boss fight on stream, and I put Bonnie Tyler on because it made it so much better. So square attacks left, triangle attacks right, and then circle fires your missiles. And there's going to be obstacles so you can jump on a motorcycle, because physics be damned, we're jumping on motorcycles. And the jumping is actually pretty funny. I shouldn't have jumped on the previous moment. I should have jumped on the ramp. But the checkpoints are really kind on these sequences, and it makes them really fun. And they're a nice distraction from the incessant gauntlets of shooting things. So, I think if there was a little more platforming, a little bit more to the fights, then the game would have the pacing down to a T. But as it stands, it is a very deliberate one of these games. And if you like that, you're going to have a ton of fun with it. I just think this shit's stupid. I love this kind of stuff in games. I really do. I don't like it when it's hard. You know, if it was one-touch death, like that stupid polar bear in Legend of Korra, then I'd probably have a different opinion. But when they make it dumb and fun, it's everything you need from a game. Just a little bit of irreverence. You know, like the Tron section in Kingdom Hearts, even though that towed the line, because that could be difficult on critical, especially at level 1. But it does, it reminds me of Road Rash, it reminds me of, you know, goofy shooters. And that is something that we've kind of got away from. It gives me Twisted Metal vibes, Vigilante 8 vibes, good vibes basically. Vibes of games that weren't the best games, but were really fun for the time. And I had a lot of fun with them. But just jump over the obstacles, mash the gun. They do diversify these sections later on, which is kind of cool. And here is the power slide, but do this early, guys. If you do this too late, it's got a lot of startup and you'll die. I've hit a lot of walls, trust me, just by messing that up. But there's the red screen. Is that the end? No, still going. You can pull wheelies if you want, which is awesome. I like pulling wheelies. It's another thing that really reminds me of Road Rash. Does anybody play Road Rash 64? That was a fun game. Not a great game, but a fun game. And I do truly believe that what gaming is missing at the moment is that very statement. Games that aren't technically or critically very good, but you can have a lot of fun with them because they're exactly what they are. You know, they're a cheaper, less cohesive vision of a game. Instead of a million sequels and everything being the fucking same and everything imitating each other, there were games, you know, that came along that were goofy. And this is probably not the best example of it because it's 100% imitating something better than itself. But it's doing so competently and it's doing so in a format that's enjoyable. And then you have this stupid shit, which is just glorious. Oh, I love it. But yeah, this game gets a big recommendation to me. Just be aware, the combat gets dense towards the mid-game. And if it's not exactly tickling, you know, all your senses, it's not going to change its way. It's unabashedly itself, which is a good thing. But I definitely was getting bored on stream the other day. The people in the chat was keeping me entertained because the gameplay wasn't there. But that stems from a lot of features, not just the game. Like, I love God of War, but I don't really have any urge to play it at the moment. It's one of those things where I have to be in a specific mood. So is Vengeance the best rank, or is it the worst rank? Because for me, S should be the best rank. But where does V sit in the A, B, C, D kind of thing? Very strange grading system. But anyhow, guys, that is Ghost Rider, Nicolas Cage edition. Insert every Nicolas Cage joke you can think of. The last boss is going to be the bees. It was all in the stream the other day. If you want to check that out, it's archived on Twitch right now. It's a fun game. It's a game that holds up really, really well, and it's a game that emulates really well too, as long as you use the correct graphic settings. But yeah, thank you for watching, and you take care now.